Let's get started. I'd like to thank members for their efforts to reach a consensus. And I have to deal with two issues, and we need to extend the meeting by 15 minutes, barring any objections. And second, since I'd like to apologize to the watching audience because we had to suspend a few times. And I think in the future we should try to come up with a consensus before we meet. Can members report the results? Ms. Oden Chow, thank you. I'd like to thank fellow members for their efforts. And of the 3 points I want to keep, other members accept some of them, but not others. For the wording of 2C on the intent of declaration of assets when the chief executive assumes office, I would insist on that because I find that important. I urge other members to accept this. If so, I think we can move on. Under 1, I believe there's no dispute on 1D. And for 1E, I think we can accept the Secretariat's version, right? Under 1E, on the words text disclosed by the Australian media, they are no longer necessary. But for the phrase of the handwritten phrase, providing relevant assistance without constituting conflicts of interest, the authenticity of such amendments and so on, and these are still should still be retained. I only agree to removing the words disclosed by Australian media. And in Holden Chow's version, there's an assumption that there would be modifications to the paperwork, whereas the Secretariat's original version was more neutral. In principle, we can accept that, but I'd like to take in views from the legal advisor. For 1E, as the chairman said, if members agree to the amendments, the Secretariat would have some. The Secretariat has some suggestions, and we suggest as follows in the text to study whether there have been any revisions or amendments, and if members agree to the change, we would look at the Chinese text of past handsets, and our translation team would look at the English version. And for the phrase whether modifications have been made, we urge members to consider whether the phrase authenticity of such amendments can be taken out. Any further comments? If not, the Secretariat would fine-tune the wording. I have no objections. And those are only minor amendments by the Secretariat. All right. Let's move on to 2C. On the issue of intent. I don't see how there's any further room for compromise. I think a show of hands on whether you agree or disagree. Chairman, I have a suggestion. We all want to get work done. Some members agree with studying the intents, some not. If we vote on this today, I think we should avoid this the best we can. In the past, or in past discussions, we managed to avoid putting these suggestions to the vote. Chairman, If the word intends is not accepted by other members, I would spend some time to fine-tune the wording under 2C, and I would propose it again next time. So we have narrowed our differences down to this item. This is a big improvement. Mr. Lun Chao, can we change the word intent into interpretation? If the interpretation is not clear, we can look at intent. I think this is in line with our practice on handling basic law articles in Hong Kong. So would you accept that? Interpretation would cover intents. If the wording is clear, we don't have to look at the intents. If not, we will look at the intent. I think this is the norm. Chairman, thank you for your suggestion. In my amendment, I have used the word intents more than once. For the modifications, including the handwritten modifications by Mr. CY Leung, I added the word intents. In terms of the nature and background of this document, I'm just trying to explain why I used the word intents. Some members might challenge why I have to look at the nature, terms and conditions, etc. of the agreement. I think these are all relevant in terms of the context of the agreement. So it explained why I insist on this word. I thank you for your suggestion, Chairman, but this is significant. I propose these amendments. I think I need to discuss this with my colleagues. It's similar to a court setting. We need to settle our differences. If members do not accept the word intents, can you allow me more time to make further modification?
Well, since you don't want to give up on the wording original intent, I'd like to hear from other members. Perhaps I will have to spend a little bit more time. Mr. Lam Chak-ting first, please. Chairman, the public would expect us to be efficient in embarking on our work to get to the bottom of the truth and to come up with a report for the members of the public. So for a wording like this, if Mr. Holden Chow insists on this, why don't we put it to the vote? I don't think it is a responsible act to delay this again and again. Dr. Priscilla Leung. Chairman, every time we talk about this, there are new arguments. The most important thing is to have a consensus. There would be plenty of opportunities for us to vote in future if members are minded to vote. We're not coming to the main issues yet, and we haven't seen the major differences yet. I don't think there is a need to do so, and like Mr. Chow said, we can put questions along those lines. Now, for those members who insist on not having the words original intent, they may have let their imagination run riot. I think it would be a good idea for us to have regard to the documents behind the drafting of this provision. We may not necessarily have to call the witnesses. I'm not sure whether there are for Article 47. I am looking at this from a neutral point of view. Now, for the wording's original intent, members might resist this. Now we will look at the wordings first before we talk about the original intent. If it's only when we fail to have an interpretation that we will look at the original intent. Dr. Leung, I don't know why there is such an insistence that even if we don't have the wordings here, we may need to do so. This has always been our practice. Now, if I insisted we have to take out all the documents, then I would still have the right to do so. Mr. Holden Chow has put in so much effort. This is my attitude. I'm trying to communicate with members. Secretariat has put in so much effort, and we do respect that. Now, are we exaggerating the situation? Are you with me? Now, maybe we are reading too much into this. Perhaps we might wish let Mr. Chow mull over this. Now, the Secretariat said some of the wordings may need to be fine-tuned in any case. So I think that other than original intent, there may be some other wordings that would be acceptable. There are 3 more members who have raised their hands. Before you speak, now for 1E, the Secretary has to fine-tune that. For 2C, we can use original intent stroke interpretation and use this as a provisional version. Right, original intent will still be there. Would that address your concerns? Would that address your misgivings? Stroke. Yes, stroke. Now, until we have the conclusion, we can have both wordings there. We have to come back again in any case. Yes, the Secretariat would fine-tune that. Now, we can keep the original intent stroke interpretation. It seems that even if we put this to the vote, we're going to end up with a tie. In future, there will be plenty of opportunity to vote, but we'd like to minimize that in order to forge a consensus as much as possible. All right, the 3 members. Mr. Alvin Young first. Chairman, this is not a training course for beginner lawyers. I know that Mr. Holden Chow has spent so much time on this document. Now we have displayed our goodwill to accept 3 clauses of his version. Like Chairman said, we can use the wording interpretation. Now we have Cap 1, general clauses in interpretation ordinance, so we don't really need to have the legislative intent. This is not an academy. We don't have to call all the people who were involved in drafting the documents. If these people are not here anymore, do we have to find a medium to speak through? Now, 1E, we have come to an agreement. Is just a matter of fine-tuning the wordings. So, Chairman, you suggested interpretation stroke original or legislative intent. Do we have to spend another meeting arguing over interpretation and legislative intent? All right, thanks very much. Maybe the fault lies with me. I try to forge a consensus. I'm open to criticism. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Chairman, now the wording interpretation is in line with the common law. Now, Mr. Chow, Pepper versus Hart in 1992, the House of Lords decision if we cannot make sense of the wordings, that the law lord's decision was that we could go back to the legislative history to look at the legislative interpretation. And Dr. Priscilla Leung said that we had to go back to the legislative history to get some reference. That decision was a landmark decision. The composition of the House of Lords has a Lord Keith, Lord Bridge, Lord Mackay, and it's a strong composition. I hope that Mr. Holden Chow will spend an hour or so reading this decision. If he feels that this wording interpretation as proposed by the Honourable Chairman is acceptable, we hope that we can come to a decision. I hope that you would read the decision. Mr. Andrew Wan, Chairman, you said we should display some goodwill. I'm sure that the members of the public would know that we're not here to argue for argument's sake. Now we have displayed enough gesture. Now we are going round and round in circle in these few meetings. Mr. Holden Chow, I hope that you would understand that he should display a little bit more goodwill. I don't think we should drag it out anymore. We have dragged it out long enough. I think we have come to a point where we're beginning to hair split. Mr. Holden Chow said he would like some time to mull over this. I don't think it is appropriate. I get the feeling that the whole thing has been outsourced to Mr. Chow. Now, he has come forward and drafted this version. I think this may be laudable. I don't think this is laudable as far as I am concerned, because we've spent so much time. I don't see the need to have another chance. Now, he would like to keep the legislative intent, and there is no guarantee that we can achieve anything. I'm concerned that we may go on ad infinitum over this particular point. I agree with you, Chairman, that we can use the wording interpretation, or alternatively we can put this to the vote, otherwise we'll end up with this tie. All right. I might make people impatient. That's my fault. I'd like to have more consensus to start with. Now we are looking at the proposed major areas of study. We haven't come to the report yet. If we get hung up on the wording, we may not have enough time to deal with the issues even for 3.5 years. So I hope that we would have a consensus, and we have to get on with the issue in an efficient manner. If we cannot come to any agreement, if members cannot come to an agreement over the neutral wording, interpretation, then Mr. Chow can insist on his legislative intent, and we can put it to the vote. I don't think we should get bogged down on this. Mr. Chow, Chairman, if I may, we don't have very much time here. Yes, I appreciate that, Chairman. A moment ago, some members said that they have accommodated me to a large extent. Now, I have half a dozen amendments that I have given up on, and I am prepared to accept members' views. I could have, where I can make concessions, I have given up on half a dozen revisions. Chairman, as a drafter of this revised version, pardon me, I have some points that I would insist on. This is an important matter to me, and I don't really want to take any decision in a rush manner. Now, you said, Chairman, we can have interpretation stroke legislative intent. Now, this is an idea that is floated by the Chairman. We have narrowed down the differences. We may have different views, but we have been narrowing the field to this last point. So, Chairman, if you suggest interpretation stroke legislative intent, I think we can consider it. There may be a third proposal, there can be a third description that we can come up with. I just don't want to take a quick decision within 2 minutes. So I plead with you to consider my proposal. Yes, I've been accepting your pleas, but I think interpretation can cover legislative intent. I don't think we need to have another meeting to discuss this wording. I cannot not accept Mr. Alvin Young's point that 1E is somewhat different. 1E, we have already agreed on the phrase. We have 1 minute. I think we should take a decision. We should state our view as to whether we accept Mr. Chow's proposal. You have to make it quick because we're running out of time. Mr. Ho. No, I don't think we should be too concerned. You told us that this is not part of the terms of reference. Now you are very concerned about it. You're hanging on to every single word. My point is very clear. If this is not part of the terms of reference, what's wrong with referring to the legislative intent? Now you talked about the pepper and heart. Well, interpretation includes legislative intent. Well, legislative intent doesn't include interpretation. So you have narrowed down the field. No, I don't think that there is any problem with the inclusion of legislative intent because we're talking about BL 47. If members are bogged down on this one single word, it is wholly unnecessary. If this is not binding, why don't you leave it, let them have this wording ban?
I have offered my view, and I hope to wrap this up this time. I would put forward this motion. Ms. Odin Chow proposed the word intends. So who would support this motion? You said there wouldn't be a vote, and now there is a vote, and you said interpretation already covers intent. So for the sake of the record, this is not a must. This is just your personal view. According to the basic law, and I don't want to go into a debate on the basic law with you today, but the word intent carries a specific meaning. If you hope for more time for discussion, barring any objections, we will extend the meeting by a further 15 minutes. If there's any objection, we have to end now. I think the chairman cannot decide whether interpretation covers intent. Does anyone object to extending the meeting by 15 minutes? The meeting must adjourn.